Damn, son, where'd you find this? Let's go!
Welcome to the Life of Phys Podcast. I'm your host, Tyson Martin. On this episode, I have Joe D'Agostino. Joe's a photographer based in New Jersey. Joe grew up surfing, skateboarding, and studying Jiu Jitsu, and for the past 24 years, Joe has worked as a police officer where he serves as a SWAT Team Commander and law enforcement sniper. He has helped spearhead the resiliency program at his police department, which helps first responders understand and cope with the effects of PTSD. Joe has been a contributing writer for FujiLove Magazine and has had his work featured in numerous periodicals. One of the most important reasons for Joe's body of work can be attributed to the therapeutic nature of photography. He has found that spending more than half of his life in a career that can often expose the horrors in life, photography allows him to look at the world through different eyes. Finding the beauty in everyday life helps Joe control his own journey with PTSD. Joe believes that photography is a journey on a road that has no ending but can only be traveled. Now let's hear a word from our podcast partner and get to the show. The Life of Phys Podcast is lit by Harlow. Harlow is on a mission to empower creators to elevate their creativity with lighting kits made to last and built to inspire. These lights are bold, beautiful, and powerful because Harlow believes that your lights deserve to be seen. To learn more, follow them on Instagram at Harlow Creators or online at www.harlow.com. And don't forget to use our discount code Tyson10 to save 10% on your order.
All right. Well, I am glad to be here. My name is Joe D'Agostino, and I work primarily for myself as a photographer, doing many different types of genres of photography, but I also work with Harlow, formerly Hobolite. I have shot kind of every camera system under the sun, I think, in one point or another. I am also a soon-to-be retired police officer in the state of New Jersey. I live on the East Coast, Long Beach Island area in New Jersey. I'm about 2 hours south of New York City. So I spent my entire, well, I would say now, considering my age, more than half my life as a police officer. So yeah, that's kind of me in a quick nutshell. I am a father. I am a husband. I have a daughter who's 15 going on 25. And I have a wife who is much younger than I am. I am 47. So I'm sure that came through as the ding there. That was the wife. I'm 47 years old and she is 35. So we have a little bit of an age gap between us. So she keeps me young. That's for sure. Because I'd probably be a couch potato if it wasn't for her.
they seem to do that.
Yeah.
First and foremost, Joe, I just want to thank you for coming on. I also want to thank you for your service and what you do for the community. My cousin was a SWAT officer in Portland, Oregon. Had to retire early because of traumatic experiences.
Sure.
And I know something that's important to you is you have a program where you're showing and talking about PTSD in first responders.
Yeah, I would love to get into that. As much as it seems like, this is a photography-based podcast, I know we have talked beforehand where, it's shifted more into a larger thing. And for me, the two intertwine. And this is a story that, well, to be honest with you, I've always had this story. I've always known that this was my background and the way that I had approach my photography, but I feel like it finally came to light the first time I met Kieran Carnani, and she's our marketing president for Harlow, and she used to be with Leica. So this is kind of, I'm trying to timeline this the right way. Let's just go like this. We know that there's a lot of mental health issues with police officers in the law enforcement community. We know that they suffer horribly from PTSD. I don't think that there is one police officer that has spent any kind of considerable amount of time on the road that does not suffer from PTSD. A lot of them won't admit it. A lot of them won't address it or try to I won't say that you will cure PTSD. It will never be cured, but learn how to manage it. And it's a real problem. A lot of it has to do with the stereotype or the mystique in the law enforcement community that if you expose these issues, you're somehow weaker or you're going to be picked apart, because the law enforcement community can be like a den of wolves. It's like if there's a weak one out there, like you're going to get targeted, you're going to get heckled, you're going to get, teased. It's like a bullying atmosphere. It can be that way. So if you don't learn to bite back early, then you're going to have a hard time. So if just imagine now you're a 5-year police officer and you've seen horrible things and you're suffering and you can't go to the people that have the experience because you feel like you're going to get eaten up. And so it's this like constant revolving door of like suffering, not getting help, suffering, not getting help. And then ultimately it ends with alcohol abuse, drug abuse, like just mental health issues, divorce, domestic violence, anything, gambling issues. The door is just, it's wide open for any of those issues. So a couple of years ago, I think it's like throughout the US, but I know specifically in New Jersey, they initiated this resiliency program. So basically what it is you're not a trained therapist whatsoever, but it's somebody that kind of understands what's going on. And primarily it's more of a senior member of each police department that's been around the block a few times. And, basically you're now a resiliency officer. And if anybody is suffering, they can kind of come to you and you can kind of lead them into the right direction of therapists, counseling, whatever it may be, a hospital, just being there, checking in on them and things like that. And it sounded great in theory, but like we didn't really know how we were going to put it into practice, and we're still constantly learning. But we were able to put it into practice probably last year, really, really able to put it into practice last year when our town suffered a horrific double homicide, which I happened to be on. And the officer that was really, really struggling with it in a different way happened to be there the night before and had this sense of guilt that they could have avoided the situation that happened early in the morning, even though that they couldn't. There was nothing they could have done, because at the end of the day, we are bound by laws and what we can and cannot do. And it didn't meet the criteria, and it wasn't her call to make that criteria. It was mental health workers said, no, can't do it. And ultimately ended up in the death of 2 people. So she really struggled with that the next day. And I was able to talk with her. I was able to fill that resiliency role and kind of let her know, like, this is kind of what you're going to face. You're a brand new cop. The person that you signed up to be, well, let me rephrase that. The person that you are right now is not who you are going to end up being once you're done. If you spend any amount of time carrying a gun for a living, wearing a vest, a bulletproof vest, it's kind of weird, right? It's like, the guy gets the father or whoever wakes up in the morning and puts a tie on and goes to work, where you're putting a vest on. So hopefully you don't get shot and killed and can come home. And then you're carrying a gun that you may have to take somebody else's life, God forbid, if that situation arises. And it's a very, and until you really sit down and kind of pull yourself back from the situation and think about it, it's a very unique and terrifying situation. And you do it every day like a computer, like, just a machine, until the machine stops or the machine starts to need oil and it starts to break down. And then you start wondering why certain things are happening and you don't have an answer for them. And now you look back on yourself and you are completely different than the person that you started 20 something years ago. So yeah, it's a crazy ride. And again, we can get into some of that and we can get into the weeds. Like, I have situations, for me. So I learned how to deal with it through outlets. Number one, photography. Photography was the number one outlet for me for PTSD. I've said it a long time ago. I actually first heard that and it resonated with me when I talked to a Fujifilm ex-photographer. He was a paramedic, and he talked about PTSD and photography. And I reached out to him immediately, and I was like, dude, you nailed it on the head. That is exactly what it is. And that's kind of been my like mantra going forward. Because again, there's times where, you know, you just live your life, and before you know it, you've lost time. That happens to me a lot. I would lose time. I would be from point A to point B, 2-3 minute, 5 minute drive, and not know how I got there. And the next thing you know, I'm parked in the parking lot, and my wife was talking to me, and she was like, did you hear anything I said? I'm like, dude, I no. My biggest trigger, my biggest indicator for PTSD is my hypervigilance. Wherever I am, wherever I walk into, I'm scanning. I can't stop. I can't turn the switch off of thinking all the time about, well, if this happens, then I'll do this. And then if this happens, then I can go and do that. And I need to get there. I need to get them with me so we can go here. What will I grab? What can I take? How do I move? And I've had to learn how to kind of dial that back. And the only thing that doesn't trigger that is when I'm holding a camera, because I'm looking at the world differently. I see the world. I've seen so much horrific and like badness in the world that like when I have a camera, I'm looking at things that are beautiful. And maybe they're not. You know, my biggest thing is like I'm an Eggleston freak, and I love like that, you know, just that vintage slash, you know, war, you know, like torn wall, that just nothingness. And people will look at that and be like, what are you taking a picture of graffiti for? Well, because it's beautiful in a way. So, you know, even to me, like anything beautiful that I find beautiful, anything that I'm looking for, I'm searching for with a camera, it just takes my mind out of that space and I can be present. So yeah, PTSD and photography go hand in hand for me. And I wish more people would kind of discover that. Yeah, obviously therapy, everything else that you need, but yeah.
Well, I was just a little while ago, I was on Fred Ranger's podcast.
Yeah, I love Fred.
Yeah, oh, he's amazing.
I did his podcast once. I did a podcast with Fred. I don't know where that episode is. It might be like the Honeymooners lost episodes now. I don't think you can find it, but yeah.
Yeah. So when I was talking to him, I was explaining how I was going through probably one of the worst moments of my life. And I was looking for an outlet. My outlet before growing up was always skateboarding. When I lost it due to injuries, I didn't have anything to replace it, that creative outlet that my brain needed.
Right.
So I got deep in my brain. And for me, when I get deep in my head, it's awful, you know? So I was looking, my daughter's a photographer, very talented fashion photographer.
That's awesome.
She sold me her old camera. And I was thinking, you know, I'll take pictures of the kids, the dogs, no big deal. And then I found long exposure water, that milky look. And I spent months trying to figure out how to do it. Yeah. So when I finally got one that was someone there, I was hooked. And when I was talking to Fred, I was like, I'm like you. I love graffiti. I give me a moody, gritty, grimy street scene and I'm in heaven, you know? And I said, for me, photography is my therapy. And that doesn't mean I don't have a therapist now, because I do. But in a way, like you said, when I have that camera in my hand, I forget everything else. I'm focused on capturing that sliver of time. And then, you know, using my own struggles as the way I capture, or the way I edit, or the way I see a scene.
Sure.
You know, so the connection between creativity and mental health was a main reason why this podcast even exists. The FICE name actually stands for Photography Heals Your Soul.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And for me, it's so deep and important. Yes, I'm an artist. I create work, but man, sharing that story and letting others know that it's okay to not be okay, and that there's people out there that are willing to help and talk to you and help you get through things. We aren't alone anymore.
I struggle with how to describe it correctly, but I almost get and I'm not a confrontational person, despite what I do. Like people say, oh, law enforcement, you must be like crazy type A and like militant. And no, it's not me at all. I literally don't fit the stereotype of a police officer. I am an artist first and foremost. I have been an artist my entire life. I've always been either drawing, shaping surfboards, handcrafting, leatherwork, painting, airbrushing, you name it, I've done it. I've made a huge business out of, working with leather at one point where it got so backed up that I had an 8-month waiting list for products that I literally couldn't keep up with. And I just had to kind of shut it down and say, I can't keep this grind anymore, but it was hugely successful. And so when I say this, I don't mean it to be offensive to anybody, but I almost get offended myself when people just pass photography off as like a quirky little hobby. Because it's much more. It's a medium. It's, you if somebody was painting a picture, you wouldn't look at them, and be like, oh, they're just having fun. Like you'd be like, oh wow, they're an artist. And like I feel like sometimes with photography, people are just like, oh, well, you went out and bought a nice camera. That's cool. You do photography. I hate that. You do photography. Like nobody, I don't know. So I try not to be that way. To me, it's much deeper. It's a tool. Like you said, it's a therapy. It's a tool. I struggle sometimes with people that are constantly like, well, they're in a race, right? They're in a race to find their style. They're in a race to get better. And I just said, I'm like, where you are right now is not where you'll be next year. It's not going to be where you are 5 years from now. And I've said it in numerous things that, I've worked with people. I just said, photography is a road that could only be traveled. You're never going to get to the end of it. It's just, so enjoy the ride. You just have to enjoy the road that you're on, because you're going to learn a lot of things. You're going to fail more than you succeed. And failure is where you find growth. I mean, if you're doing everything right all the time, which you're not, so don't even assume that you are, you're not going to learn anything. And, I love that. I love that. Like, it's just a journey. So just enjoy it. You're not competing against anybody. And you don't win the game of photography, right? There's no winners. I'm sure if you've interviewed some of the masters that we all consider the masters, they would look at themselves and be like, I'm not a master of anything. We consider them masters, but I doubt they do. I doubt, because they're not done. You're never done. And you can always learn something from the amateur. You can always learn something from the seasoned pro. You have to look at it with, open eyes all the time. And the minute you stop doing that, you're closing yourself off. There's so much that's available to you out there to learn from. And yeah, it's a whole thing, man. It's something wild. And once you get into it, you get into it. It's fantastic.
So speaking of getting into it, how did you find the camera? How did it become a part of your life?
Yeah, that's a good one, man. I love that. So my father was a photographer, although he would be probably somebody that would be considered, oh, he does photography. He took it serious somewhat, but he was a good photographer. He shot weddings. He shot, obviously, film. But he was the guy, he was the father who had the Canon AE1, brought it to Disney World, and had the huge, brown hard case with all the film and all the filters and all the, all the different diffraction lenses and a tripod, and like to Disney with all this. And he loved it and he was into it. And I just remember my greatest memories of that was photography, bringing everybody together when we would bring out the film slides. So, there's nothing like a slide projector with a sheet or just a plain wall and just hearing that clicking sound. And that every click that comes in is either going to be a fresh memory or it's going to be a slide that has to be reconfigured because it's upside down and backwards. because that would happen all the time when you watch slides on it. Oh, I got to turn it around. You got to take the whole carousel out or flip the slide around. But there was always something about that kind of family gathering with the slide projector. And I just hear it like almost like the metrodome, like in my head, just constantly going. And I just remember those memories. And so when I was in high school, I took Photoshop, or no, not Photoshop, but there was no Photoshop. I took photography, and we worked in the darkroom, and we got a Canon AE1 to play with. And I remember shooting black and white film. And I was like, yep, I'm kind of hooked into this. It kind of fell to the wayside as I got older. But then when my daughter was born, I'm like, let me get a camera again. And I really didn't remember anything that I learned in the past. And I kind of understood some things, but I really didn't have really a grasp on photography. And, I ended up becoming self-taught. I taught myself everything through failure, through trial and error, through YouTube, whatever it may be. And I bought a Canon Rebel XT, 12 megapixel crop sensor, I believe. And that was my first kind of right back into photography camera. And I just started really trying to take it serious, taking pictures of my daughter, just learning portraiture and just really kind of taking it serious. And I ate and slept everything photography. It's like, I'm kind of that guy that if I get into something, like I'm into it. Like I got to know everything about it.
We have a lot in common.
That's kind of what it was. What's that?
We have a lot in common.
Yeah, that's what it was for me. And so I started getting into it, and my dad saw me really kind of growing with it. And then he gave me his Canon because he wasn't using it anymore. And he gave me the Canon. Before I even took a frame with it, I sent it out for a CLA. I got it back. And the first frames that I took with that camera were of my daughter with Portra 400. And they're the only frames that I ever took with it. The camera is on a shelf right past me over here on my desk. And I really don't shoot it. I took pictures of my daughter with it, and there it is. It's just kind of preserved. Now I have a million other film cameras up there. Why I have a million other film cameras, I don't know, because I have a love-hate relationship with film. I love film. I don't love the price of film. I don't love the waiting around for it to be developed, nor do I want to develop it. Film. I don't have the patience. I'm a very impatient person. And for me to go out all day and see if I have any bangers and I have to wait a couple days is just way too grueling for me.
I feel the same exact way about film.
Yeah, that was my start in photography. And from there, and now, like when my dad looks at me and talks to me about my photography, he's like, you're in a completely different league than I ever was. And it was funny because when he gave me the Canon AE1, I had his little note cards, like, cheat cards for like wedding photography. And it's like, bride and groom, groom with mom. And it's like all these different lists of like the must-have shots. And I'm like, oh, this is hilarious. I love it.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And then it's just continued your whole life. It's brought you to where you are now.
Yeah. So it's like, I started with a lot of doing like product photography for my own business that I had at the point, and obviously my daughter. And then that transferred into, hey, let me try shooting a wedding. So I went and shot a wedding with another popular wedding photographer. And she didn't want to pay me because she just said like, well, you're just here to kind of learn. And I was like, that's cool, man. You don't need to pay me. It's fine. But then the caveat was that she probably used about 75% of my images for deliverables. And so I started questioning this, and I was like, okay, like, it's fine that you don't want to pay me because I really just wanted to see the experience. But now you're kind of using my work, and that kind of seemed like not a fair deal. So I worked with my other friend who was also new into photography and very talented landscape photographer. And he was doing weddings on the side too, but he was getting a couple bucks. And, we said, why don't we launch our own wedding photography business? So we did that. And we were all word of mouth, and we started getting a lot of clients. So now I was a pretty much wedding photographer, which that's a whole new beast and crop of people. And so I was doing that for many years with Canon, and I like it, but it wasn't my thing. My thing is the streets. I love street photography. I work for a lighting company, which is so odd because I love street photography. I'll say it again. I love street photography. It's where I find my passion. It's my center. It's how I recalibrate.
Well, you're an old school skateboarder. So I shoot like I skated. It was just, I look at different angles.
Yep. I grew up. Yeah. Yeah. I just, but when I took away from that experience, one thing with that wedding photographer, and is that there's no reason to be so guarded. That hoarding over the process and not allowing others to kind of feed. I despise that. What is the benefit of keeping a secret or a skill locked away? Because the fact of the matter is, you and I can stand on the same street corner with the same exact camera and have completely different pictures. So I don't understand why I would not share my process with you, because it's still not going to be mine. It will be an original, and I never understood that, and it was a real turnoff for me. So I really, when I would bump heads with people, or I would in conversation talk with people who were very closed off and guarded, I knew that there's no really reason to further explore that avenue with that person. I would surround myself with like-minded individuals that were very open and sharing, because again, I will talk with anybody about anything. I will tell you about my journey with PTSD, with therapy. I will tell you about the horrors that I've experienced in my life and have seen. I will tell you about the joys, and I will tell you all my secrets when it comes to photography and everything else. I don't see the reason to be so guarded.
And that was a big part of my my push when I first started kind of creating a presence with the community over competition kind of hashtag, was to bring like-minded people that are willing to help. I mean, without someone willing to step in and be like, man, you're struggling with that. Guess what? I struggled with that a little while ago. Here's what a solution to that problem, and just helping someone with a stepping stone. I mean, I think people who are guarded are so worried about someone else coming in and taking their thunder.
Yeah. And what does that even look like? So you mean to tell me, right? If you're a product photographer or a food photographer, right? Where's the threat? Are we running a food shortage? Is there a shortage of clients out there? I mean, maybe there is now because of AI, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole to go down. But yeah, it's disturbing to me. And I look at it like photography, the community as a whole. I look at it as that. We are a community. And if I damage you, or I keep you from the secret sauce, well, now there's just that part of the community that's just that much weaker. And, when you really embed yourself with the community and you actually make eye contact and shake the hand and listen to other people's stories and where they're coming from, there's something really special that happens. And, you're going to be the one that gets the phone call for the event. You're going to be the one that gets the phone call for, hey, I had this project in mind. I'd really like you to be involved. And, if you're feeling like you're being, because you could get into your own way, right? If you feel like you're being blacklisted, or you feel like, I'm putting my stuff out there, but nobody's listening and nobody's seeing my stuff, and, I'm not getting any likes, or I'm not getting any traction on any of my work. Well, maybe you should think about the other things that you're doing besides your work. If you're just putting out there, look at me, look at me, look at me, and you're not giving anything back to the community, you're not asking about other people, you're not talking about other people and their work, you're not talking with them, it's not going to come back to you. You're just going to be in your own little hole of like, look at my work, look at my work, look at my work. Why aren't you paying attention to me? No. Well, who are you paying attention to? If you're not paying attention to other people, then nobody's going to pay attention to you. So I think if you're more freeing with yourself and more, like we said, open, I feel like it will pay itself back to you a lot more than not doing that.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you 100% on that. So you've transitioned. You were a Canon shooter. You've done the Fujifilm run.
Okay.
What brought you to the Leica brand?
So we need to, you've took the field, the quick notes on that one. So I went from Canon
Yeah.
to Nikon
Okay.
to Canon again to Sony. Fujifilm probably entered into there throughout that time. And that ran parallel with Mamiya, Phase 1, back to Canon again, then back to Sony. And now I've been with Sony the entire, now I say with, I'm not affiliated with them. This is what I'm shooting. So then Sony became my, hey, I need to go shoot weddings and I can't have my gear fail. And, I need everything to work absolutely perfect. So I used Sony. And also I want to shoot some video. So I used Sony. And then in the meantime, I've always experimented with those offshoots, Ricoh, the Canon EOS M6 Mark II, I love that little thing. Other Fujifilm cameras. And they would be like my pleasure cameras, my project cameras, personal stuff, not my grind workhorse cameras. And then, so I had a Nikon D5. Yeah, a Nikon D5. Way over what I needed. It was, rapid. I didn't need all that. I was like, dude, I'm shooting weddings. I'm not shooting like the Indy 500. I don't need a D5. So there was a guy who wanted a D5 and he was willing to trade an M10. Now, think of how unfair that trade is.
Yep.
The D5, I think you could buy it used for like $2,500 at the time, but he didn't want to spend any money. He just wanted to trade the M10. And I hopped all over it. I drove all the way up to New York. I met him in the Bronx and he saw my D5 and he's like, yo, I want the 85 millimeter lens that you have with it. And I said, that works. I'll take the 50 Summicron that you have with the M10. And he actually thought that was a fair trade. I almost feel bad telling you this on a podcast because I feel like I just like totally ripped this dude off. But no, I mean, this is what he wanted to do. And I was like, this isn't, and I was very open. I'm like, this isn't worth the same amount of money. And he's like, dude, I need a camera. Like, I can't use the M10 for pro work. And I don't have time to sell this thing. And I said, okay. So we made the trade and I had my first, well, I don't want to say it's my first. I had an M6 before that and loved it. But then my love-hate relationship with film kind of, the M6 went for stuff that I needed for work. So this was my first digital M. And I had the M10 and I loved it. And for me, that started me down a rabbit hole of an M10, like a TL, a Leica QP, a Q2, a Deluxe 8, an SL 601, and SL2S. So I have them all. I don't have the newest SL3, which I'll work on that. And what is it about Leica? First and foremost, the quality. There's nothing that feels quite like it. Hasselblad is close. I just picked up an X1D 50. And yeah, same kind of, how do you say it, right? Same kind of quality, But I really like the ecosystem. I really like the simplicity. I don't want all the bells and whistles. I want a quality camera, something that feels like a brick in my hand. And to me, when I hold that camera, I just feel inspired to take my time to create quality work. And I don't feel like I'm working. I feel like I'm shooting for me. So the Q2 really has been the camera that's traveled everywhere with me. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to, for me, Leica, I just love the heritage of the company.
Yeah, I do too.
I haven't been able to add one to my setup yet. That is a goal. I do have a goal to, I think a Q3 would be perfect to replace my X100 would be.
It's a very dangerous goal.
Gives me something to strive for.
Yeah. It won't end.
Yeah. Oh, just like you've gone down the rabbit hole there, I could start I've only been doing this 6 years and I've gone insanely crazy with brands. And I always end up back with Fuji.
Listen, I love Fuji. I had a great time with Fuji. I worked with FujiLove Magazine for quite some time. I did a whole series of write-ups for them. I do enjoy what they're doing. I sometimes question where their direction is. I feel like there are certain cameras that really didn't need to be made. And then I feel like there's cameras that do need to be made and they're not being paid attention to. I feel like sometimes Fuji attempts to kind of run with the big boys, but kind of lets down a little bit in certain areas. I know there's been a lot of talk lately about their auto-focusing system. I don't know much about it, but again, not to get technical, but, great company for what they are. I'm not a JPEG shooter. I love to play with the recipes. That's another thing. Like, I love it. I get the recipes, and I set my camera up and all my custom buttons. And I'm like, I'm going to call this one Portrait. I'm going to call this one Kodachrome. And I get all excited about it. And then I go on vacation and I shoot in one of the profiles and I'm enjoying it. And then I get home and I edit the rolls.
I do the same thing.
So I'm like, why am I wasting my time doing all this when I don't I love to edit. I love editing. I always said, like, if I can get a clean raw file, like, I can make something out of it. And I just love to make, I don't care if it's true to life. I don't care if it's, that's not, historically accurate, or that's not the way the scene looked. Doesn't matter to me. There are no rules. And if there are rules, then you're really limiting yourself. There's no rules. Like, just enjoy in the process and make it yours. And that's why when you would see people, that's another pet peeve of mine. When I would see people, I will not critique anybody's work. I've been asked to do it. I cringe at the thought. I will only give honest feedback, but I don't like to critique. To me, there's a difference between critiquing and feedback. And I don't like to be a critic, and I won't do it because I just feel that even if it's not a great photo or it's not processed the right way, who am I to tell you, as the photographer, as the person that had that vision in their head, that it is wrong? Nobody went up to Picasso and said that people don't look like squares. Well, Cubism says they do. Right. And so I don't know. I look at everybody that has influenced me photography wise or art wise, as artists. And, I'm looking Fred Herzog. I'm looking at my thing right here, Steve McCurry, Hiroshige. I'm looking at all these people. And again, I don't think that they cared about what other people were thinking. I think that they just did it for themselves. And I think if you do things for yourself, your true self is going to show through, and that's what you're going to be known for. The greatest, I think, compliment that I've ever gotten throughout my photography thing is people said that, I knew it was your photo before I even saw your name on it. And what's crazy is that I am a chameleon when it comes to photos because I edit in so many different color palettes. So it's weird that somebody can say that they identified one of my photos, because I feel like I changed things up so much. But yeah, it's
compositional too. I mean, everybody has something different they do with their compositions. Yeah. I'm one of those people too. I love when someone says, "Hey, I knew that was your photo before even looking at your name."
Yeah.
And that's so important as someone who's trying to have an identity and build what they love. And I edit just like you. Like I was saying, we have way too much in common. I edit how I feel, and I get the same. Oh, well, that's not what it looked like. I don't care.
No,
this is for me, and I think it looks amazing, and I'm happy with it.
Well, if you edit it like somebody else, like it's supposed to be, then somebody else right alongside of you can, as much as I say, you're not going to shoot the same photo, but it's going to look kind of the same. Yeah, I don't know. I want to elicit a response, a feeling. I want to invoke something. I don't want to be like, oh, that's a cool picture. I want it to be like, oh, wow. Like, oh, because he put blue in the highlights. Like, I see how that looks a certain way. Like, I don't know. I don't like to do what everybody else is doing. I like to think outside the box. I like to break rules. I think there was an old Arnold Schwarzenegger speech where he's like, know what the rules are, but then break them. And I think it's important to know the rules, but I don't think you should stick to any of them. I feel like you need to really do your own thing. And like what you were just saying, like, we were talking about the greatest compliment, somebody knowing your photos. I feel like when people ask the question of like, well, how do I develop my own style? I feel like it just comes. It just, before you know it, you have a style and you didn't even realize that you kind of stepped into one.
Don't be afraid to play with sliders in your editing. Have fun. Just jump in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back in July, I think you were in Vancouver, my hometown where I'm currently am.
I was there for a day.
Yeah. And I was like, I think I threw you a message. I'm like, man, where are you? Like, let's get together. You didn't see it, but that's okay.
Yeah.
How was your experience in Vancouver? What did you think of the city?
So it was great. We landed in Vancouver from New Jersey and we were on our way to Alaska. So I was going all the way up the interstates like Ketchikan and all that in Alaska. And I just said, like, I was really struggling, as always. Every time I take a vacation, I literally say, all right, this is the camera that I'm bringing and going to focus content on. And then, like, I'll throw an audible like the week before. And then the night before, I'll take it all out of my bag and then go, why am I bringing all this? And I'll bring something else. And I do this all this. I'm doing it right now because I'm leaving for Florida on Friday. And I'm like, what am I bringing? What am I bringing? And I think I'm going to bring the Deluxe 8 and I'm going to bring the little Canon EOS R M6. And I probably will change it before I walk out the door. But I was like, I'm bringing the SL2S. So I had a 24-70 and I brought a 100-400 for whales and wildlife. And I said, that's what it is. And I actually stuck to the plan, got to Vancouver, got the camera out, and really cool city. Really enjoyed, walking downtown. We were by, like, I guess with the gas town steam whistle and all that. And we ate at a couple restaurants. I wish I would have had more time there. I like the skateboarding scene.
It's big.
It was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, they were doing like a full event in this one little corner. And there was a Red Bull truck out there. And like, I got a couple pictures of some people skating and some people just sitting. And one of them was, I think, on my Instagram, and just working with the shadows and just this guy with a bald head leaning over his board, just kind of hanging out. And I really liked the scene. I thought it was really cool. We were there for a night. We actually got, so a couple months beforehand, I was in Jet Stadium and we actually had tickets to watch a concert from the GM of the Jets. And we were in his box and he was with us. And they said, hey, do you guys mind if some hockey players come and sit with you? And we're like, yeah, whatever. So it was like two brothers, or I think there's three brothers. Oh God, it's going to escape me now. But one of them is the captain of the Canucks. I forget what his name is.
I don't really follow hockey anymore, so I couldn't tell you.
Two of the other brothers are in the New Jersey Devils.
Oh, nice.
So they were sitting with us and we were talking with them and we were telling them we were going to Vancouver. And he said, oh, when you get to Vancouver, text us. So I texted the guy and he got us into a nice restaurant. Like, he pulled a phone call, and I wasn't expecting that. So I got the captain of the Canucks calling a restaurant and we ate there and we had a great time. And then we had to get up and get on the ship and shoot out. But yeah, the city is, I've never been to Vancouver. I've been to Montreal, Quebec, Niagara, but I've never been over that side. And yeah, it was cool. It was definitely a real modern city, really modern looking.
It's definitely changed a lot. So I moved to Vancouver from Portland, Oregon in 1989 when my parents split. But I've been coming here my whole life. So the 80s in Vancouver, it was really a blue collar working man's town. Yeah. So all those high rise condos you see on the harbor and everything, that was all big open industrial.
Wow.
So Fred Herzog captures it very well.
Yeah.
Because this is where he
one of my
was.
favorites.
Mine too. See, more in common.
Yeah.
So yeah, Vancouver's definitely very modern, especially in the area you would have been down around Canada Place in the Pan Pacific Hotel area, where the cruise ship was. But there's nothing like seeing, for me, skateboarding has been everything. And watching the scene continue to grow and how the spots that I grew up skateboarding here in Vancouver are still being utilized.
Sure.
And so it's very cool that you got to experience that.
Yeah, I've been kind of talked to numerous times by Take Keo, and he's always like, Joe, Vancouver. He's always telling me, come to Vancouver, let's hang out, let's get together. Like, we've been friends for many years. We talk numerous times on the phone, about different projects. He's helped me out immensely with a lot of things. I hooked him up with the Hobolite Harlow kind of collabs, and really, really good guy, genuine person. And he's always telling me, and we can't ever meet up. We've never met in person. We're always like 1 week away from each other on something that, we're working on. And I was hoping to like at least catch him when I was out there, but he's like, oh, I'm going to be in Italy. I think he was in Italy teaching some kind of workshop for students or something. And I was like, oh man. But yeah, he was kind of giving me like where I should go and where I shouldn't go and things like that. But traveling in New York enough, like I get it. I understand the city atmosphere. Yep. I just, that's fine. I just failed to remember about Fred Herzog. And, that was his spot, right? Vancouver.
Yes.
Yeah. They're like Herzog, like smashed together with Edward Hopper is like, that's my thing.
Nice.
Put those two together, art and photography. That's it for me. And you can sprinkle some Eggleston on top of that.
Just a little fine seasoning at the end.
To sweeten the color up.
Yeah. Taki is like a Vancouver legend.
Yeah.
I know. So I've been trying to get him on the podcast since I started it. And we talked and we're like, we go back and forth a bit. And I'm like, I need to get you on because like he's one of the reasons that I started shooting Fujifilm.
Yeah.
Because I saw his video on YouTube when I was looking to move from a Nikon 3000 to a new current camera in 2019.
Sure.
I saw his video on, I think it was the XH1. And I was like, okay, that's the brand I want. So I hopefully will have him on soon. I love what he does. I love just how carefree he is. And he doesn't really bend or cater to people. He's himself.
No, he doesn't. He's definitely got a good, he's helped me out a lot when I was trying to work a lot closer with Leica. And, that could be something to get into as well. When I was trying to work with them and I'm like, Take, I'm just trying to kind of break in here. I feel like I'm known, but like, I just can't get to a point where the doors open up enough to squeeze myself in there. And I'm not a small person, but and he's just like, he's like, you got to work on your story. He's like, you just got to, it's all about the story. And then he was, him and along with Kieran. So that could kind of circle back if you want to get into that, because that could transition into like Harlow and everything else. So, Hobolite started out for me a long time ago when Hobolite was Hobolite. It was a brand new lighting company. And so when I say Hobolite, I am now referring to Harlow, but at the time it was Hobolite. I reached out to them on Instagram, just said, really cool lights. I said, they look great. I said, hopefully they work as good as they look. And they reached out and are like, would you like to check them out? And I said, sure. And the next thing you know, I get this Pelican case, huge tan Pelican case with an Avant, a Mini and a Pro model that they had, and stands, and like they sent me everything. And I was like, oh my God. So I started looking at it, and as soon as I opened up the stuff, I was really blown away by the quality, like most people are. And the thought process between like how innovative and how cohesive the ecosystem is. Everything kind of works with each other. The mounts work with everything, and they just kind of thought of everything, and it was really high quality. And this is not an infomercial for Harlow or Hobolite. You buy it. Yeah, you buy it, you don't. But so, I started working with them. I did a couple videos and they saw my work. I did some photos for them. They asked if they could use the photos for the website. Absolutely. And, I'm kind of one of those people where I probably should be charging what I do, but I really don't. I kind of just love working with community and brands. So I just kind of give stuff away. Um, but they were like, we would love you to sign up and be an ambassador. And I said, don't know what that means as far as an ambassadorship with you, but great. And I signed up and I was their first official Hobolite ambassador. So I started going to some events, New York, met the team, met Helena. This is back when we had Michael and Danielle kind of running things. And so I was there from the beginning. And, a couple people have come and gone. And then we hired another person. And I went to Vegas with them for NAB Vegas. I was out there all week and kind of just working the stand and talking about the company. Had a great time with that. And then again, recycling people, new people left, or old people left, new people came in. And now we have the Kieran team. And I've always known Kieran. I've talked to her a few times through Instagram when she was with Leica. And I was always trying to get in with Leica. There was a few times where maybe they were going to send me a camera to check out and review. Maybe I was going to be able to get that experience, but it just really never, it wasn't followed through on, and I got to call them out on their end. I begged, I tried to work with them numerous times. Even Jason Roman, Stock Easy, was trying to help me out. I was shooting with him sometimes. I just couldn't get to that point where they would open up that door to me. And now Kieran comes full circle, and now she's basically running Harlow or Hobolite, and I'm an ambassador. And I was like, Kieran, finally, we get to work together, like after all these years, right? So she invites me up to the Mulberry to do an event up there, kind of last minute. Hey, can you come up? We're going to do a lighting event. Love for you to be here. And that was the first time we met in person. She gave me a big hug and she started talking to me. And to be honest with you, I kind of broke down because there's something very empowering about Kieran, that she's very supportive with artists and collaborators and creatives in general. And she opened that up to me and she's like, Joe, like, you got to tell your story. And I was like, well, how do you know? Like, and she's like, I know what you're about. I know what you do for a living. I know, the stuff that you're dealing with. And like your story of photography with PTSD, like it needs to be told. And like, I broke down. To be honest, I broke down and I was like, wow, like it's been bottled up and I never really put it out there. And she's like, you really need to tell that story. So she just like, we want to keep you in a loop. We want you to keep working with us. So I started doing some reels and things like that. And it wasn't until I was in Vancouver, waiting for my Alaska trip, starving, looking for like something quick to eat. And I was like, oh, there's a hot dog truck, that I get a phone call from Kieran telling me that she has an idea and she wants to see how I feel. And she invited me to be a freelancer for Hobolite. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. What does that mean? And she's like, you'll basically do A, B, and C. I said, okay, sign me up. And she's like, sounds good. And then I was in Alaska, and next thing you know, Roland is sending me over a contract. So I started working for them as a freelancer. And basically my role was to manage all the ambassadors, kind of coordinate all the events, talk with any new creators or people that want to work with us, and kind of manage social media and come up with content. So my plate was really full. And that's kind of where it is. And certain things have dropped off my plate. Certain things have been added. But hopefully when I retire, the move will be to work with them full time, still do my personal projects. I still shoot weddings. I shoot real estate photography because that stuff kind of pays the bills, and work with Harlow. We went through a name change. Now we're Harlow, and Now our team really thinned out in the US. So it's really just me, Kieran, and Roland, and kind of just brand awareness and sense of community. And that's kind of where we are right now. But the point in saying that is that Hobolite / Harlow was the first brand that really opened the doors for me and kind of brought me along for the ride. I mean, I knew the executives at Fujifilm. They sent me an XH2S, I think, isn't it S? They sent me that to play with for a little bit. They sent me a GFX 100 Mark II to play with. And, I sent them back and everything like that. I wasn't able to keep any of it, but they never really invited me in. As much as I talked about them, I'm sure I sold them cameras, they never really invited me in. Leica, same kind of thing. When Roland came on board and I met Roland for the first time, he's like, "Oh yeah, Joe, I know you." I'm like, "How do you know me? I've never met you before." And he's like, "Oh, we know you over in Germany. Germany knows your work." And I'm like, "No phone call, like nothing. Like, can I get to the campus and check out the place?" So it can be discouraging, and I'm not saying that may not be someone's goal, right? Someone's goal might just be like, I just like to photograph things. But for me, I want to work in the industry, and it's tough when you know that your name is out there, that people, for the most part, kind of heard of you or know your work, and it's like you still can't get anywhere. And I feel like that may have changed a little bit with being associated with Harlow, but also the Leica store in New York is kind of up and running now, full steam, and like Jason's brother, Roman is kind of running the show there with Rob, and they have really been receptive of me, and Roman and I, Sayer, and I talk all the time and text message each other, and he lets me know when the events are coming, and hey Joe, you don't need a ticket, like just show up at the door and you're going to be walked right in, and that was great. And that's what happened the last time when we just went up for Matthew Baton's book signing, and I didn't have a ticket, I showed up and Sayer walked me in, and I was able to go to the after party, and it was nice. I met a lot of people, and again, people kind of knew who I was in that weird kind of awkward way, and like, ooh, this is kind of weird. But then I forget that I do have a YouTube channel and I'm kind of in there. And so it was nice. And I'm just hoping that that does go somewhere a little bit further. Cause I really would like to give back to a company that really has given me so much. I mean, when I hold that Leica and it helps me with mental health, it helps me with PTSD. It would be great to be like, hey, let me help you by telling my story. Not that they need my help, but it's just another face out there. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I am right now on that journey.
Yeah. I owe a lot to Kieran and Hobolite, because I reached out on a photo and said, man, I'd love to have my studio lit by the best lights in the industry. Yeah. And next thing I knew, I had a message saying, hey, I've heard your podcast. I love what you're doing. Let's talk. Yeah. And, next thing I knew, I had an Avant. I had a Pro. What else did I have? I think I got those two. I got to be part of the Iris release. Yeah. Now I have two. I've got the brown colorway here, and then I have the black as well. But she is such a blessing to the industry and to myself. Like, she's got me in contact with Matthew Bitton, and as soon as he's available, I'll have him on as well. Yeah. And she's been very supportive of this podcast and me as a person. She has, yeah. So my own personal struggles. I mean, I've had personal phone calls with her telling her what I'm going through, and she'll sit there and she'll give me this advice. And it's so refreshing and welcoming, that I don't feel like I'm alone where I'm at.
No, absolutely. She does have that way about her. And I can see why she was and still is very successful in the industry, where, maybe she's not pumping out work like everyone else is, but she understands the creator the creative mind, and she knows how to inspire. And you know, she's never been difficult for me to work with. There's been times where, and again, I'm coming when I started doing this type of work, I basically I'm always very completely honest about my skills. And I just said, listen, I'm like, I can photo anything you want. I can video anything you want. I said, but when it comes to business, I have no idea what the acronyms mean. I don't know anything about spreadsheets. I don't know how to come up with, this, that, or anything. I said, I'm coming from the world of like tactics, SWAT raids, you're talking a foreign language to me. And she's like, doesn't matter. She's like, she goes, I really want you to be the voice and face of Harlow here at home, like in the US. I want you to talk with the creators. I want you to be in the community. When people think of Harlow and an event in New York City, they're going to know that they're going to see you there. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm in. Like that's 100% what I want to do. I want to present the brand in a positive light, and not just as a photographer that could pump out, photos. I want to be someone who you can talk to about mental health, about the creative process, about gear, about techniques, about, the specifics, anything. And so I feel like she's really been encouraging with that. And anytime there goes the dogs. And she goes, anytime there's been so I think what I was saying is like, she's always been that supporter for the creatives. And, she's always been very patient, and she's always let me to be like, Joe, what do you want? What do you want me to do? How do I support you? Do you want to have a meeting once a week? Like, she takes the time out. I think that that's important as a good manager, as a good lead, to talk about that kind of stuff, and to see what their, people underneath them, people that they're working with, where their strengths are. So yep. Yeah, it's been a good journey.
That's awesome to hear. Do you have any wisdom or advice you can give people?
Again, I think it would echo my sentiment earlier where I say that same thing. Photography is only a road that can be traveled. There is no ending to it. Do not chase that thought process of like, you have to develop your own style. It will come organically. I feel like a lot of things will. I feel like if you're being true to yourself and to your craft and your vision, it will echo throughout the world. People will see it. People will recognize it. And again, give back. Don't be that creator that is only concerned with their own progress. Help others along the way. Share what you know. Embed yourself in that community, and just, shake the hand, look into the eyes. Try to learn the person across from you and what they're dealing with, and their struggles, or how you can help them. I feel like if we do that as a whole, the community will just be so strong, and, there won't be a door closed to anybody that needs anything from anybody. They're going to be able to do that. And, I feel like that's my number one thing to kind of pass forward.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate your time today, Joe. Again, thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you for being there when I need to reach out to someone.
Absolutely.
You've always responded to me in a quick manner. So thank you. Thank you for being on the Life of Phys.
Oh, I appreciate it. Amazing. I'm really excited. And, I thank you for the opportunity. I think what you're doing is, it's different. There's so many different genres that or podcasts or whatnot, and it's just talking about gear. There's more to this. It's not about the new camera. Sometimes it's about, just the process and like we touch on today, the mental health and kind of what photography can do for you. So I think what you're doing and the road that you're on is unique, and I think it's very powerful. And above all, it's needed. So I thank you. And
thank you, sir.
Thank you for the opportunity. Absolutely.
Oh man, as soon as we started to communicate and I started to kind of figure out a little bit more about your background and your story, I had to have you on. I know we had to reschedule. I've had some health issues the last couple months here.
I'm glad you're doing better.
Thank you, brother. You know, and a lot of people have been asking me what's going on with myself, the podcast, and Harlow. And while I'm, you know, not on the ambassador team currently, I am an affiliate. I will continue to be an affiliate. I will continue to push the product because I firmly believe in it.
Yeah.
So, you know, but when the time comes, look for Joe and I to do some work together. Yeah,
absolutely. And you're not going to be short of any products because they keep kicking more stuff out all the time. So we're only growing. That's for sure.
And if you guys, if like I've told Karan, if you guys need anything, any help with Canada, you know, if you need someone to gear an event or do something like that, let's talk, because
absolutely,
you know, I think Taki and I could do wonders here.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Life of Phys Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed our show, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to bring you content and the stories of our incredible guests. And remember to stay connected with us on all social media platforms. It's at LIFE_OF_PHYS, or on the internet at www.lifeofphys.com. Thank you for tuning in, and have a great day.